this special meeting of the Gainesville City Commission. It's actually a workshop, never mind, City Commission Budget Workshop. I want to be careful with my wording there. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to the adoption of the agenda.
Let's do that.
That's so moved. It's the term, Commissioner.
Let's adopt it. I assume one of those is a second then?
Sure.
Either one of us. We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed and distributed. I see no lights. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously with Commissioners Chestnut, Willets, and Deckenwalker absent. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, we're on to our discussion item, 2026-318, fiscal year 2027 budget development, with a recommendation the City Commission hear the presentation from staff.
Very good. Mr. Manager, did you want to intro this?
I sure do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today is the first of three budget workshops for FY27 budget. We're going to cover 13 general government departments, which represents about roughly about $27.5 million of your general fund. We do have, and we'll talk about this, we do have two other workshops, one scheduled for May 28th, one for June 2nd, which will cover the remaining departments. And then at the June 2nd meeting, we'll also have preliminary roles for you to look at. We're picking up from the March 26th fiscal retreat. At that retreat, we identified we're going into general fund shortfall of about $7.5 million. We are going to talk a little bit about that and how that preliminary estimate is now corresponding with some of the department budgets as we go forward. Today, you're going to hear about all of our charter budgets as well as our internal departments, and then at the March 28th meeting, it'll be some operational departments, public safety, those types of things. For each department slide, you're going to see three main areas. One is going to be the core services they deliver. The second is going to be the connection to the strategic plan. And then third will be the FY27 estimate. After each of the department walkthroughs that Ms. Teslia will give, we'll be able to answer any questions from staff or from the budget office. There are a couple of expectations we want to set for this meeting. First, these are estimates, they're not final numbers. We have, as you all know, several variables still out there: property tax valuations, preliminary on June 1, and final on July 1. If you remember last year, we had a preliminary estimate that was later revised upwards after the final roll came in. We have the general services contribution from GRU that we're expecting in June. I have based on discussions that I've had with the CEO GM, I have no expectations that will come in different than it has in past years. And then we have some of the other revenue, state sharing on late in July. And so we will anticipate, then we have fire assessment as well. We will anticipate holding an August budget workshop for you all in case we need to have this commission decide on any balancing scenarios depending on where revenue levers come in. And I think that's all I wanted to talk about. And I will turn it over to Ms. Teslia to take you through the presentation.
All right.
Welcome, Ms. Teslia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, Allison Teslia, the Director for the Office of Management and Budget. Welcome to the first budget workshop for the 2027 budget development. Oh. There we go. All right. So here's an overview of where we are in the budget development timeline. In March, we held the fiscal retreat and provided preliminary estimates. The department budget requests were submitted in April, and we reviewed them with the city manager's office. And then we're here today for the first department budget workshop to go over the charter offices and administrative services departments. All right, so first we'll recap some of the information that we presented at the fiscal retreat. Okay, so here's an overview of the preliminary revenue estimates for the general fund. Some of the assumptions for the revenue projections used very conservative estimates. For property taxes, we estimated a 5% increase, and then the remainder of the revenues we used a flat or minimal increase to the revenue projections. Okay, and then an overview of the preliminary expenditures for the general fund. The assumptions we use, we maintain the the FTE levels and the frozen positions, and we included estimates for 3% merit increases, fleet expenditures, and insurance costs. Okay, so here's a summary of the general fund estimates for revenues and expenditures that were presented. As the manager mentioned, some of the outstanding items that we have are the government services contribution, which we expect to receive in June, the property tax values, which will be finalized in July, the state shared revenue projections, which usually come in around late July, early August. We also had the fleet replacement schedule, which is in the process and will be reviewed over the next couple weeks. And then the preliminary fire assessment, which we'll be presenting on May 28th. All right, so here's a breakdown of the fiscal year 2027 strategic plan, which was approved in March. It reflects the city's goals, the critical organizational components, and the top priorities for the city. All right, next we'll go over some of the department budget presentations. Okay, so here's the highlights for the fiscal year 2027 general fund expenditure estimates for the 13 departments that we'll be going over today. The remaining departments will be presented at one of the budget workshops scheduled for the end of May and the beginning of June. Okay, first we'll start with the Office of the City Attorney. The core services for the Office of the City Attorney are to provide in-house legal counsel and advice, state and federal statutory expertise, legal representation for the city, and to protect and reserve legal rights and assets. Their strategic connection is the best in class for neighborhood services. So small. Okay. And then for their budget, we have no proposed changes for their position levels. We're keeping it at 13 right now. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate for all funds is about $2.08 million, which is up about 3.3% from the fiscal year 2026 adopted budget. Some of the updates to their budget is minor adjustments that were made for their payroll allocations between the funds that their offices support. And then operating increases that are related to law subscriptions, equipment rental, and professional development. Okay, next we have the Office of the City Auditor. The core services for the Office of the City Auditor are providing risk-based annual audit plan, audit and post-audit reviews, assurance and advisory services, and investigating fraud, waste, and abuse. Their strategic connections are all of the citywide strategic pillars. Okay, and there's no proposed changes to their position levels for fiscal year 2027. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate is about $795.1 thousand, which is up about 7.3%. It reflects increases for personal services. In a previous request, we swapped out the senior internal auditor that was frozen, and we fully funded that position, and then we froze the staff auditor position and then unfunded that position. There's also an increase for professional memberships in the operating category. Okay, next up, the Office of the City Clerk. Core services include public meeting management and notices, records and election management, lobbyist registration, administrative support for the City Commission, and basic policy research. Okay, there's no proposed position level changes for fiscal year 2027. Their 2027 budget estimate is $1.41 million, which is up about 8.2%. Operating increases reflects the addition of ADA remediation, increases to the Civic Plus, and records management costs. Their budget also includes the addition of the Sister Cities membership, which is about $4,000. All right, next up, we have the Office of the City Commission. Core services are to represent the city's neighbors and promote public participation, provide policy direction and oversight to the charter offices, support the city's strategic plan, and perform statutory responsibilities. There's no changes to the position levels for fiscal year 2027. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate is $603.7 thousand, which is an increase of 0.4%. This increase is primarily related to annual ethics training that's being budgeted for next year.
Hang on just a moment,
Sure.
Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we'll, when we get our August CPI and some of those salaries change per ordinance, we'll then we will come back to this and there will be a change, right?
We would make adjustments at that time.
Okay, right. So we can suspect, like, CPI right now is 3.3%. Generically, I don't know about our region, but, okay, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the Office of the City Manager. The core services are to provide executive leadership for all the city operations, community engagement and advocacy, legislative coordination, and organizational governance. The Office of the City Manager oversees 16 departments and approximately 1,500 community builders. Okay, so for the position levels for the Office of the City Manager, it increased to 15.5 FTEs. This reflects the reorganization of the BOLD program, which reallocated 3.5 FTEs, the Office of Resiliency, which was 1 FTE, and then the Community Relations position from Communications, which was 1 FTE. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate for all funds is $3.49 million, which is up approximately 27.2%. That's primarily due to the allocation of the funding for the BOLD program, the Resiliency Office, and the Community Relations position. It also includes personnel changes related to the ARPA-funded positions that are now going to the general fund. Operating increases are attributable to the reorganization, and then the decreases for those will be reflected in those departments' budgets, which we'll be presenting at the other budget workshops, with the exception of communications. Also, under the other funds, you'll see the change from capital outlay to aids to private organizations, which is related to the housing set aside that we moved at the last budget amendment, and we put it in its own fund. Okay. All right, next up, we have the Office of Communications and Marketing. Their core services are to provide public information and education, broadcast and video services, media relations and crisis communication, website and social media management, and creative services and for print and digital. Okay. Their FTEs have gone down by 1, as previously mentioned, to 8, with the 1 position being transferred to the city manager's office during the fiscal year. Their fiscal year 2027 budget estimate for all funds is $1.04 million, which is down about 3.6%, which reflects the transfer of the community relations position and associated operating costs for that position. All right, next up, we have the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Core services include equal opportunity and ADA guidance, the investigation of discrimination complaints, small business utilization support, enforcing fair chance hiring, and providing anti-harassment and anti-discrimination training.
Pause you, Commissioner Willetts.
Sure.
Sorry for all the interruptions, Ms. Tessie. So we discussed real briefly in the clerk's budget about ADA mitigating the website and stuff like that. But if the Office of Equity and Inclusion is our ADA guru to some degree, or our expert, should this be budgeted under this office or remain? And this is just a more general question to point out that this is an interaction between a role that Mr. Folston does and that Ms. Bryant does. Like, maybe I'm just pointing it out that there's this interaction of a value that is written into our documents, but then sometimes when the rubber meets the road, it gets taken care of in the big online document kind of portal. So I don't know if the clerk can just mention a little bit about that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may. The tool that we're looking at adding for ADA compliance comes from a vendor that the city clerk's office already contracts with. And if there are some options within that we're looking at, but one of the options, if we bundle with the new agenda management and minutes system, it will reduce the cost of doc access, which is the tool. So it may make sense for it to be within the clerk's office so that we have that bundling and savings, if we end up moving forward, and receiving that budget. So it made sense for us to kind of do it together, but the ADA compliance tool would be implemented citywide.
Okay. And then would that be a tool that your office would only oversee, or is there some sort of participation with the Equal Opportunity Office to
I have been in contact with all of the charters
Right.
to make sure everyone's on the same page throughout the process of our. I think we were waiting to hear from today if that's something that the commission, if we're able to move forward with, and then, if that's the plan that I know the city manager has been over, and I don't know if Andrew, you want to talk a bit about the ADA compliance plan. But if this tool is what everyone wants to move, I don't want to force it on everybody. But if this is something that everyone thinks is a good idea and want to move forward with and implement within the ADA compliance plan for the city, it's something that we are coordinating with all of the charters. So.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I interrupted now instead of earlier, but it's something that is in your budget, but it is something that is a core service, or something that the whole city needs to do to provide. It's partially just the records that you're the keeper of, but on this other half, all the other departments generate the records, and so I understand it's an opportunity for some good collaboration across charters. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Willits. Commissioner Book.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Director. I'd say that sometimes there's focus on this particular office, and important to recognize that we've decreased the positions in the last essentially 24 to 36 months, and that Director Folsom is already doing some kind of reorganization, some terminology to make sure that we're in compliance with some statutory regulations which are coming down. We are already doing the correct things as it relates to state statute. But the term itself may generate some confusion for people. And I know the Director, I'm not asking you to speak about that, but that'll be something in a separate agenda item that I think is coming forward to us. So I don't want to get too far afield. I just want to say that we're working that particular area, and that we're largely working on small business compliance and grant language that keeps all the different things that we do that fund also in compliance. That's it. Not necessarily a budget question, so I think that would be it.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Yeah, so the charter calls it an equal opportunity position, an equal opportunity office. This is a change to the name of the office by probably resolution or potentially ordinance that occurred in 2018, 2019, back in that era. But the charter is still very specific that it is the equal opportunity director, and that's really what's important. I do want to address what Commissioner Willis brought up. It's an important thing to consider. I think the bulk of the work probably happens in the clerk's office, and Mr. Folston's office is then the kind of the compliance manager for all of that. But yeah, every charter area of responsibility touches part of that. It's just that the bulk of the records that are posted are through the clerk's office. So, if there is some savings to be had by doing it through the clerk's office where most of the work happens, that's probably the logical place for it to be. But it's an important conversation to have, I think. So, all right.
Okay, so there were no changes to the authorized position levels. However, the personnel budget reflects the unfreezing of the compliance manager that was approved during fiscal year 2026 and transferring the immigrant affairs manager position from ARPA to the general fund. The total fiscal year 2027 budget estimate is $1.34 million, which is an increase of approximately 21.1%. All right, next up, we have the Department of Financial Services. Their core services include the annual financial report, revenue and expenditure monitoring, and providing fiscal strategy. They manage the accounting, debt, grants, payroll, revenues and receivables, internal controls, financial systems, pension investments, and treasury management for the city. Okay, so there were no changes to their authorized FTEs for fiscal year 2027. The fiscal year 27 budget estimate for all of their funds is approximately 3.46 million, which is an increase of 0.4%, which is basically minor payroll allocation updates that were made between the funds. Okay, next up, we have the Human Resources Department. Their core services include the recruitment and hiring, classification and compensation, employee and labor relations, professional development and training, and then performance management. There are no changes to the number of authorized FTEs proposed for fiscal year 2027. Their fiscal year 27 budget estimate for all of their funds is approximately 2.39 million, which is an increase of 2.9%. Overall, their operating reflects a reduction for anticipated printing needs that will be going down next year. All right. Next, we have the Office of Management and Budget. Core services include planning, developing, and monitoring the city's financial and operating plan, the internal management consulting and project management, and then facilitating and monitoring the city's strategic plan. Okay, there's no change to the number of authorized FTEs proposed for fiscal year 2027. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate is 1.04 million, which is a decrease of 0.9%. Changes to the overall budget include personnel services that are based on the fiscal year 2026 actuals, and then operating increases which are related to software, equipment rental, and professional development, which is offset by the personnel adjustments, reflecting an overall decrease to the budget. All right, next up we have procurement and contracts management. Core services include the solicitation and contract awards, contract administration and compliance, procurement card and purchase order oversight, small and local business outreach, and then surplus property management. There's no proposed changes to their number of authorized FTEs for fiscal year 2027. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate for all funds is 964.8 thousand, which is a decrease of approximately 3.4%. The reduction for operating reflects the elimination of obsolete software as we transition to using Workday modules, and then adding the funding for the new postage machine lease that was on the last budget amendment for an overall budget decrease of approximately $34,000. All right, next up, we have risk management, whose core services are to administer the city's risk management policies. They oversee insurance procurement and claims response, employee well-being clinic and programs, and then health and retirement benefits administration. All right, there's no changes to the proposed number of authorized FTEs for fiscal year 27. Their fiscal year 27 budget estimate for all funds is 45.72 million, which is an increase of 6.4%. In the general fund, you'll see a reduction in contractual obligations. And then in the other funds, there's an increase in health and benefits by approximately 1.9 million. And then in the general insurance for approximately 0.8 million, with the main driver being rising claims and premium costs. All right, and last but not least, we have the technology department. Their core services include technology strategy and governance, service delivery for infrastructure and help desk, cybersecurity and regulatory compliance, and enterprise application and analytics. In fiscal year 2027, the authorized FTEs is going up to reflect the 18 positions that were authorized during fiscal year 2026. The fiscal year 2027 budget estimate for all funds is about 11.29 million, which is an increase of 28.9%. The increases are primarily related to establishing the department and then the transition to bring technology in-house. And the technology director is here to answer any specific questions you may have about that budget request.
Hang on just a moment. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing I did want to point out on the technology front is we do anticipate bringing a budget amendment to you all. I think this will be on the next budget amendment. We have our I think we're close to having final costs for the actual build out of the space where technology department will be housed, including our data center in the RTS maintenance facility. We're estimating that it's around $2.2 million. So that'll be, we'll be bringing that to you for consideration on your next budget amendment and allocating that out of excess fund balance. So that's not represented here. This is strictly talking about salary and operations, but there is a one-time capital cost to be able to build out the IT space.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Engel.
So bringing the technology departments in-house means we're not paying GRU to provide technology services as much. So do we know like what the, like we see a large increase here, but know what like kind of the trade-off is budget-wise?
Could you repeat that question? Ed,
Sure.
technology
So
director.
part of the reason we're bringing the technology department in-house was so that we weren't tied with GRU on that and buying services from them, basically. So I was just wondering, as we see this budget increase, do we know what the buyback was from GRU, or what we expect to pay?
Well, what we're expecting this year is we have the GRU ITSLA down from 5.9 million to 3.7.
Okay.
We do expect to see that to continue to decrease next year. And this year, we're building out our infrastructure, starting to purchase our applications that we need, bringing on the personnel to match the timing of that transition. But we do expect it to be a multi-year, so fiscal 26, 27, and then we expect to be complete in 27.
Okay. So just see, as we see these budget increases, they are partially offset by the reduction that we're paying to GRU.
I think partially to be negotiated. So some of the applications that were bundled with that SLA are going to definitely move. The other services, we still have to work with GRU on to see what that looks like for 27. We made the assumption that we would work through that negotiation between now and probably the start of the fourth quarter of this year.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Engel. Commissioner Willets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Nagy, I think the question going on his, Commissioner Engel's question is, where is it in FY 25 or adopted or amended FY 26? Are we seeing that under operating here, what we do pay or have paid GRU in the past, so that we understand in this chart, which line is this dropping out
Under
of, and
operating.
which line?
Operating is including the operations on the city side in addition to the operations from the SLA that are with GRU.
Okay.
Both of
because-
those are combined in that line item for that transition period.
Okay, so just looking at that, and in the end, I'm looking for where is the some savings of money, you know? This was the idea of this originally.
Yep.
Well, I want to say, that wasn't the only reason why. We thought we could have some benefit financially to bring it in-house, but also so that we control it, particularly as our government is kind of split in two, that we really have control
Right.
over it.
I think that's a big part of it, is that we will be able to control those costs. Remember, they escalated 89% and 98% back to back year over year, and that's when we needed to get control of those costs. I'm expecting the transition year, we're going to be paying for things like the SLA and for circuits as we're building out our new system and we're building our infrastructure. We're basically paying on both sides as we transition.
That's
So
kind of what I
fiscal
was getting
28
out of
is
this
where
one.
you'll see it come back down.
Okay, so out of this year, to some degree, we pay on both sides and part of the transition.
Yes.
And then the idea is that
Right.
some of those agreements we'll stop paying for, and it'll be more in-house.
That's
Closer
the
to
idea,
100.
is that we'd like to see that wind down a bit next year,
Okay,
and then have it fully on the city side for fiscal '28.
thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts, and that's all. Thank you.
All right, so here's a recap of the departments that were presented today, and an overview of their fiscal year 2026 budgets compared to the fiscal year 2027 estimated budgets. Okay, so here's where the fiscal year 2027 revenue and expenditure gap stands today. As indicated, some of these expense estimates will be offset by reductions for departments that were not presented today. And we will also be updating some of the outstanding items that were previously noted as that information becomes available. Okay, so next steps in the budget process. We'll be back here on May 28th for a budget workshop to go over public safety and the operating departments. June 2nd, we'll be here for a budget workshop to go over community development, transportation, and non-departmental. Then in July, we'll receive the taxable values and set the maximum millage rate. In August, we have a budget workshop tentatively scheduled to discuss any outstanding items, and then we'll hold our public hearings in September. So that's all I have for now, and we'll open it up for any questions that you may have. All the department directors are here if you have any specific questions.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Willetts.
Sorry, can you remind us, what was our assumption on tax roll growth, the percentage?
We used 5%.
5%? Okay. And our estimate of the state revenue sharing, did we go to that flat, or?
I believe we did that flat, or it might have been 1 or 2%.
Okay.
We were conservative with that since it's an unknown at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone being conservative with the 5%, growth on the rolls. We'll say that when you look, I appreciate the city manager's office putting the millage growth analysis in there, that even if we get the full 9% growth on the rolls like we had this particular year, it looks like we're still, we have a $7.7 million gap. That would give an additional $3 million. So we're still about $4.5 million budget gap here. I know that I'm trying to figure out. Well, we'll go through the process and we'll find a way to balance the budget. But I guess my question to start off is, we've had excess fund balance that we've kind of relied on in the past. How much did we take out of excess fund balance in FY? I think it was 25. Like how much did we end up with taking out in that particular fiscal year?
I don't have that information, but I can get it.
From my recollection, Mr. Mayor, it was less than 2 million. It was
Okay.
like $1 million and some change from what I remember. We'll get the firm number.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out where the trajectory is of our excess fund balance, because we have had to, that's always been there as a cushion. And then we're taking about $5 million out of that for Citizens Field, right? And then it looks like we're going to be making sure the technology department is shored up, which I'll point out is, I think the plurality of this budget is the increase in the technology budget, which is incredibly important. We have to get that right. Otherwise, no one else within the city can do their jobs. The city is like every other organization, a technology-heavy organization. But I just want to, as we're cutting that, as we're relying on that, I'm just kind of curious, like where we look to be at the end of this fiscal year, and then what we have left over.
Based on our current projections, we'd still have 1.8 million in excess fund balance.
What 1.8? Okay.
With the anticipated uses that we've talked about.
Okay, so there will be basically toward at least, and that's just excess fund balance. We're still within our fund balance level at that point.
Correct.
But basically, we'll have drawn down about 9 million, I guess.
Yeah, I think we're sitting at about 9.4 from the fiscal retreat.
Okay. I mentioned this from before, but I do get concerned about kind of having more of our large capital projects. I know that we've allocated funds from those capital projects, but as we talk about property taxes and all of that going forward, I love having that cushion there. That cushion makes me feel very much more comfortable. I know it's an excess, but I think it's important. The related to the so we last year we did something a little unconventional. We decided to freeze positions instead of eliminate positions. How are we thinking about, and we froze them sort of what was currently vacant at that time. How are we thinking about how we're going to approach that in this next fiscal year with the frozen positions versus the elimination, or what is the current, what is our current trajectory going forward on those positions?
So, I mean, I wouldn't say largely that's going to be a commission discussion. I think there was a fair amount of debate over whether last budget season, whether those positions should be fully cut or simply unfunded. And what we ended up doing was unfunding those positions. Some of the positions, I think the bulk of the positions are going to be in some of the other departments that you have yet to take up. If you remember, I think there's 9 positions in, at least 9 positions in GPD, several positions in parks, and then there's a handful of, I think, a few other frozen positions sort of scattered around general government. I think where you're getting at is a desire not to see these positions sort of slowly creep back into the budget if we don't have the budget to be able to pay for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that the way we did it was they were vacant at the time and we froze them, right? That isn't necessarily the best practice of how you figure out how to run an efficient organization. You say, well, what positions do we need? What do we not need? And then you eliminate the positions in the next budget year, you bring it up, or you do a mid-year budget request to say, this department needs it. We cut it from before, but we're seeing this and then coming back, which is what, yes, I would prefer to not roll over frozen positions year over year and have some kind of thought as to, does Parks need this particular operations person? Yes, it was vacant at that time, but they need to fill it. But that means we might pull that from somewhere else, or just to have more of a systematic look top to bottom as to what positions we need, which ones we don't, and then have that be our full FTEs. I think we kind of made an emergency decision in a way to make sure that we could look year over year, but just and so that would be my preference. That's our FTEs. We can always do budget amendments mid-year if we need to. I guess I can circle back around later, but those are my thoughts right now.
Very good.
Thank you,
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Book.
So I'll just start where you left off, Commissioner Eastman, which just dealt with excess fund balance. So it was one of my thoughts, which is if we are to use that, my thoughts, I know what you're just looking for is feedback, Mr. Manager and Director. We would only use that for infrastructure, one-time cost, non-recurring. So if that ends up being something in the technology sector, then I would probably be in favor of that, right? But it has to be in the excess area. It can't be in the fund balance, which we have via policy. So that's just a quick one on the aside, but important. That might allow us to slightly chip away at what's going to be the deficit. The second thing is from a communications and marketing standpoint. Just a thought is, so we're in our first. There'll be plenty of attention on what we're doing with the first workshop. But I think we want to be very proactive about the way we reach out and say, what would you do? Now, I realize there's some risk in that because people sometimes don't understand some of the behind the scenes costs that you can't just wipe out. But I think in everything that we put out from a public perspective, we should be saying, here's what we have, put it all out there, and what ideas you have. And we take that as possible. Again, some risk, but worthwhile, because we are facing a gap, and we need to know what people think and what they think are the most important services and people and programs and where that'll come. So that's a communications and marketing thought. From a standpoint of there's some increases, some decreases, and some flat numbers amongst the departments that you showed us, Director, and it's going to be very, very important to look for administrative overlap and consolidation. Now, I don't know where those are at this point because it's our first workshop, but if there was overlapping software, overlapping programs, administrative support amongst all 5 charters, I think that should be an exercise that the 5 charters should be doing. And you're going to have to be real, honest and with each other behind the scenes to say, what might we be able to do together that might lower some of the costs, because we're not going to get to 7.7 million plus without some other extreme levers that I don't think we would probably be in favor of pulling. So that's just a thought, is what's the administrative consolidation amongst our 5 charters, and where that might exist? And that's not just programming and software, that could be people too, you know. That being said, I do like the fact that we have built in for what is necessary raises for the staff that run the city. I think that's absolutely essential. That's something you cannot take away from. So to the extent we have overlapping, our 7 bargaining units have opening in wages over the next 2 to 3 years, that is a necessary cost increase that I think the public supports, right? Because that's who runs our day-to-day operations. Not a lot of questions here on workshop 1. My last thought, Mr. Manager, if my colleagues support, is much like we've done the last 3 budget years, having a 10-year looking back, and we have most of this data, what has been our general revenue increase? I mean, these are graphs, these are digital representations. What has been our general budget, our general revenue? What has been our FTEs in the last 10 years? It will show where we've grown. It will also show how we decreased in the last 36 months, in spite of the expansion that we have to do because a piece of government is no longer with us. And I think that will be very, very helpful for the public. You compare that against inflation rates, and it will show that we're growing in a way that is, I think, very prudent fiscally. And that, along with the millage, which will show where we've been and where we've been. So something that it gives us a digital representation over the last 10 years of some of those facts will be very helpful, especially for the next workshop. And that would be it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Willetts.
Mr. Mayor. Speaking of some of the wages, what did we assume for wage increases for CWA and MAPS employees? 3?
3%.
3.0, okay. And then what's driving the fringe and benefits? Because it looked like all across the departments that are staying basically even. What's really, is part of that health insurance? Is it, what's driving that outside of normal wage increases that are then, multiplied?
So it's a combination of the health insurance increases and then also adjusting for the other insurance allocations, such as workers' comp and what are the other ones, Steve? The liability.
Can we get a little sneak peek on what the status of, what the state of insurance is, our insurance, like how much more expensive it's getting this year? Just a little bit of, because we see numbers for some of those fringe benefits in departments that are not changing FTE, and let's say it's 6, 7, 8%, but if we know that wages are only changing perhaps 3%, can you tell us a little about, how much of this is being driven by things that it's harder for us to control, like insurance?
From the benefits perspective inside the personnel service, there is a driver from the health insurance fund. Its increase is 14%. I want to put that in perspective. We have gone 0, 4, and this is catching up. The growth is largely in the pharmacy cost associated with providing the plan, more so than the medical inflation built into services, which are there in the cost of service, but our utilization has actually dropped a little bit to essentially offset that. But that utilization is being dropped because, medications that have been introduced to kind of lower the need to go to the doctor more frequently. This will be the first time in 3 years employees have seen an increase in their cost of health insurance. So that's
what is that increase going to be?
Yeah,
for the
it's
different
a
plans?
shared cost increase this year. It has not been since 2023. So 24, 25, and 26 they did not see. Well, 24 they did. So 25 and 26 they did not.
Okay. How much? What is this? Can you give us a percentage or a dollar amount for some of these plans? roughly?
It depends on the tier.
Yeah.
People on the individual level do not see a significant increase in cost because the collective bargaining agreements, they set out the terms of how insurance premiums increases are split. So the employer picks up 80% of the individual premium increase. So it's probably $2 or $3 a pay period. Whereas on the dependent tiers, it's a 50-50 split by contract. So if you have family, it's not an insignificant amount. So it's in the $40 per pay period range. So
Increase.
increase, yes. I wish it was only $40 a pay period total. Everybody would love me.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, well, that's good
Okay.
to hear a little more, different from the past couple of years that, a much larger increase in general, but that some of this is going to be, because it is actually increasing, some of that is shared.
Absolutely.
Between the employer and then us as the
is
employees and us as the employer. Okay, that's good to know.
The employer still picks up a significantly more higher part of
Sure.
the premium than the employer.
For individuals, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Willets. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Tesler, you're going to talk a little bit about the state law legislation.
I can. So,
So before we do that, I want to follow up on the healthcare conversation just very briefly. This is entirely out of the hands of the Gainesville City Commission. But every single employer that provides health insurance across the nation has these same conversations because we, as a nation, choose to have those conversations that way. Imagine if there were, I don't know, a single payer medical plan that spread the risk across 340 million people, how much lower that cost would be, and it would not be the responsibility of every employer, every city, every county, every school board in America. That's an important thing to think about for anybody who might be watching this who is not here in the room. Please go ahead.
But then Mr. Barvell wouldn't have a job, you know?
We would find a place for Mr. Marvell. Yes.
there's plenty of things for him to do. Okay, so I just got something yesterday from the FGFOA regarding the state legislative requirement for us to do the exercise that shows a 10% budget reduction. It's my understanding, and I still need to verify all of this. It came in a newsletter late yesterday, but it looks like it got pushed another year, so we won't have to do that exercise this year.
I think the short answer for what it would look like to have a 10% decrease in the budget would be, it would be bad.
Yeah.
That's the short answer. Okay, Commissioner Engel.
I'm sure a 10% cut would be bad, but in addition to that, I just think it's ridiculous that the state is making us make up an imaginary budget and spend all this same amount of time that we are going to be putting into making a real budget just to have this other make-believe thing that is going onto already stressed staff. So
That sounds like waste, doesn't it?
it does.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Commissioner Engel. Is there anyone from the public, Madam Clerk? I don't think so.
No one signed up.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, anything else you want to add?
We'll see you in a few weeks.
Very good. I see no further lights up here. Going once more. All right, thank you all for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Lots more work to do. I appreciate what you all have put in so far. There's a tremendous amount of more to go around, and we will get to a balanced budget by the time we're done.
Mr. Mayor, did you want member comment?
Sure, yes. Member comment. Commissioner Willets.
Just to say that I believe we don't have April CPI data yet, but the March general CPI, but not for our, we need to check for the southern region, is 3.3%, just to take into thought when we see different increases, the overall cost of the economy. We know that we are sometimes more expensive, health insurance and whatnot, but 3.3 is where we're at with several predictions that will go up in the next couple months. Several
Yes.
Wall Street predictions are thinking that 3.3 is the low end of what we're going to see this year. So, thank y'all.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, thanks, everybody. We are adjourned.
Thank you.